Imhotep, family, it's a beautiful day. I haven't told you, but we're going to read Agitation is a Good Thing, Organization is a Better Thing by John Edward Bruce. Now, this is the introduction. I'll read it to you later, but this is from the Book of Power, and this is actually from the preview, which you can see in the description below. All right, so in the description, you can see that I have this available for download. 183 pages. Obviously, the book has many more pages, but you can kind of capture the feeling, and this is what I really want you to get. So, without further ado, let me just read it, and then we can go over it a little later. All right. So I fully realize the delicacy of the position I occupy in this discussion, and know too well that those who are to follow me will largely benefit by what I shall have to say in respect to the application of force as one of the means to the solution of the problem known as the African problem. I am not unmindful of the fact that there are those living who have faith in the efficacy of submission, who are still pregnated with the slavish fear which had its origin and impression in the peculiar environment of the enslavement period. Those who are thus minded will advise a pacific policy in order, as they believe, to effect the settlement of this question with which the statesmanship of a century has grappled without any particular gratifying results. Agitation is a good thing. Organization is a better thing. The million African voters of Georgia and the undiscovered millions in other southern states, undiscovered as far as our knowledge of their numbers exists, could with proper organization and intelligent leadership meet force with most beneficial results. The issue upon us cannot be misunderstood by those who are watching current events. To us it is not theory, to quote a distinguished Democrat, but a condition that confronts us, a condition big with hope and fear, a condition where cowards quail and brave men stand their ground, a condition demanding the highest courage, the greatest sacrifices, the noblest ambition to overcome, and to set forever at rest the question of the African's rights to the titles of manhood, self-respect, and honor. The man who will not fight for the protection of his wife and children is a coward and deserves to be ill-treated. The man who takes his life in his hand and stands up for what he knows to be right will always command the respect of his enemy. Submission to the dicta of southern bulldozers is the basest cowardice, and there's no just reason why manly men of any race should allow themselves to be continually outraged and oppressed by their equals before the law, without giving the full credence to the many published statements which have appeared from time to time touching race conflict at the South. I venture to say that if they are half as bad as reported, the Africans display a woeful lack of manhood in not resenting with force and emphasis the assaults of the hordes of ignorant and presumptuous white ruffians whose acts of lawlessness and brutality are disgracing our civilization. So I'm going to go and tell you a little bit more about what this is, right? So I said this is John Edward Bruce, and he says agitation is a good thing, organization is a better thing. That's the title that I gave it. The audio is low. I wonder why the audio is low. I don't know how to fix that. But let's try to speak louder, I guess. But here's the thing. Actually, I can move this. I can move this thing closer. But here's what I want to tell you about this. So here's how I described it. I said, look, Baba wrote this in 1889. Okay, he was a foremost black nationalist and very poignant. Respected for his merits. His method of underground organizing, the loyal orders of the Sons of Africa, mirrors my thinking for organizing in the West, right? Which is that you organize in small units, and that's something that we can explore at the next week, right? But Eurasian propaganda deceived many Africans into insisting on an American status and citizenship. So you see, one of the things that we're doing is that we have Africans who want an American status and citizenship, right? It's to give you a context today. No, I won't even go into it. But look, On Cobia, you can't be African and a non-African national. All right. So that's the thing with, like, even, of course, I wrote this not knowing that there would be a pandemic and I wouldn't be able to travel. But it's very important to realize that if you claim to be African, you can't necessarily be a non-African national. You know, you want your nationality to match your race, and that's something that really, truly, what African nationalism is about. You know, so you shouldn't mix African nationalism with non-African nationalities. This is why I lay low when I'm in America, you know, because I understand that if I'm talking about African nationalism, I need an African nationality, or the goal is to have an African nationality. That's exactly what it means. Right now I have a Eurasian nationality. You understand? And I'm saying I'm an African nationalist. So it's a confused narrative, uh, all the more coming from me. But I mean, it's confused narrative even coming from me. But it's important that other Africans, particularly Africans on the continent, understand that they're in a better position to be the African nationalists that we need, and we do need the African nationalists. You know, and for those who are in the West, you know, you got to go look for your citizenship and your status in Africa, right? So, of course, if you picked up on what I was saying earlier, what Jonathan Bruce was saying, he says, he says we got to take a fight to them. We got to fight these crackers, right? But it's like, I'm telling you, a fight is good, but to what end? In America, the hybrids are the majority, and by hybrids I mean the Eurasians. So the Eurasians are a majority. They are 200 million when we are 40 million, right? Africans are 40 million, and that's if you consider every quote unquote African American an African, as opposed to what in this book I call them bastards, but you can call them mixed, mulattoes, so on and so forth, right? Uh, if you realize that the 40 million includes bastards, if you will, right? Then you realize it's not 40 million, and you're still, but there's still 200 million white folk, and over to and 250 million Eurasians, right? If you can include the Asians and the Latinos. So the point, of course, being that you're just 40 million. You know, you're just 40 million, and while you can be the majority, well, you're not the majority in any state, but while you can, uh, with white folk, elect a president or something, right, or impact a presidential, a national campaign, you know, it's sometimes too like barely, it's barely, but in the end, like I said, if you're taking a fight to them, you know, whose land? You make war for land, right? If not your way, right? So that means it's not from make war. If you're gonna go for war, you go for it for land. But see, the trouble is that you're trying to acquire land in the largest white nation on the planet, right? And you're trying to impose your way on them, right? Which is possible but improbable. You know, if you want white folk to start practicing Ma'at or start following your leadership, right? It's possible, but it's improbable. You know, and this is why I tell Africans that it'd be wisest to move if you're in that circumstance. And particularly if you're in any circumstance, like because sometimes you might be, a Pan-African nationalist, but the nation that you're in Africa, is already taken over by an Askari, and they have deep roots, and you can't really find a way to overcome them. Even in those cases where it's like, oh, this is my land for how long, you still want to move, you know. Now, so it's wise to move. Now, of course, second why this is wars for war's sake. You could just go to war with them. But here's the thing, Baba thought better, and here's what I want to say. Look, you know, General Bruce, I call him Baba in the book. I call all the ancestors Baba and Mama. But Baba thought better than most of his contemporaries. But this is why Boko Waset Nakeru is the best thinking. Okay? You want to do this program that we outline in the Book of Power because war for war's sake is all right. All right, it's all right. Not gonna really get you anything because you want to fight for land. You want to fight for Ma'at, right? You don't want to just fight to fight, because at the end, you still have 200 million uh, heavily armed crackers, who are not going to submit to your leadership unless you somehow overpower them, which chances are you can't if you could hardly handle their police. If you could hardly handle their police, what can you do against their military? You know, so you'll be an African national when an African nation is built. So that's really the goal. To build an African nation. Um, but that's really what I wanted to go over with you. You know, I'll try to fix the audio, but this is what I wanted to go over with you: is this idea that truly agitation is a good thing and organization is a better thing. And of course, there's many more engagements, many more speeches, many more things you can engage in the Book of Power, but also just to formulate your thoughts and get them on the path of, truly, linking African nationalism with African nationhood. All right. But thank you so much for listening. Shemiam Hotep.